And it looks like temperatures will peak on Thursday in the south, with 29 Celsius possible for much of England. Further north, it's cooler and cloudier.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome to a whole new week of On the Money, where we're focused, of course, on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you to beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be talking about rail strikes, of course, with reports from the northeast of England and East Anglia. But we'll also be talking about a subject very close to my heart, and that's financial education. Because tackling this cost of living crisis also means helping people to actually manage their household budgets, and that involves financial education. A report out today, in fact, calls for compulsory money management lessons in primary schools. A waste of time or a good idea? We'll be discussing exactly that on The Money after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon. It's just 1 minute past 1. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Last-minute talks are being held ahead of this week's rail strikes, with unions meeting industry chiefs. The industrial action is due to start tomorrow, will severely disrupt travel, with some train cancellations starting this evening. Unions are accusing the government of inflaming tensions in England, saying agreements have been reached with operators in Wales and meaningful talks are taking place in Scotland. The disruption will affect businesses that have been struggling financially after the pandemic. UK Hospitality Chief Executive Kate Nichols says her sector will be hit hard.
Our businesses are reporting that there's a high level of cancellations of pre-booked events, activities, lunches, dinners that were due to take place next week, particularly in our towns and city centres where those businesses have struggled to recover from COVID. So we are seeing a dip in footfall and a dip in revenue that's anticipated to be about 20%. It's worth £500 million to the economy.
Well, this is the disruption that's planned for the week. Strikes start tomorrow on both the National Rail Network as well as the London Underground. Then on Thursday and Saturday, there are further nationwide train strikes. There'll be a severely reduced timetable that's been introduced, with just 50% of the rail network open between 7:30 in the morning and 6:30 at night. Well, travel journalist Simon Calder says if you need to use public transport, plan ahead.
first of all, find out if your local station is going to have any trains. And again, it's terribly unfair for people in Scotland and in Wales. There is nothing going north of Glasgow or west of Cardiff. It's that there's very, very little service in those two nations, and it's once again kind of London gets all the breaks. But there will be quite a lot. If you're travelling by road, then allow extra time, of course, because there will be more congestion.
Other sectors could see strikes this summer, with 2 teaching unions threatening to ballot their members. The National Education Union and NASUWT say teachers' pay has fallen by 20% in real terms since 2010. They're demanding a pay rise that's more in line with inflation. Heathrow Airport has asked airlines flying from Terminals 2 and 3 today to cancel 10% of today's scheduled services. EasyJet have announced they're cutting thousands of summer flights to try to avoid last-minute cancellations. Well, the move is also in response to caps imposed by Gatwick and Amsterdam Schiphol airports. Energy companies will be prevented from charging high direct debits under plans put forward by the regulator Ofgem. The proposals also include rules to protect customers' credit balances and green levy payments if a company goes bust. Suppliers will also be required to have enough money to make sure they can weather future shocks. The Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy is being investigated over allegations he breached ministerial rules on registering financial interests. He faces claims about earnings, gifts and foreign travel. The Parliamentary Standards Commissioner launched an official code of conduct review last week. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says he's absolutely confident the MP for Tottenham has not broken any rules. The new head of the British Army has warned that British troops must be prepared to fight in Europe as the war in Ukraine continues. General Sir Patrick Sanders says it's imperative that the army's ready to fight and win wars on land. Former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram says the UK's armed forces have to be prepared.
Always the danger, the longer a war goes on, that it's going to spill over somewhere. Or something has to happen. The international community says enough is enough, and something has to go in and try and mop it up and stop it. So it's important that our military, especially the British military, our professional military, are ready, equipped, trained to take on any conflict.
Well, meanwhile, EU foreign ministers are meeting in Luxembourg to discuss the food crisis caused by Russia's blockade of Ukraine's Black Sea ports. Ukraine's one of the top world's wheat suppliers, but more than 20 million tonnes of grain has been stuck in silos since Russia invaded. The EU's Foreign Affairs spokesperson accused Russia of using hunger as a weapon.
This is a real war crime, so I cannot imagine that this will last much longer. Otherwise, it would be really something that Russia will be accountable for. You cannot use the hunger of the people as a war arm.
The Bank of England has confirmed an affordability test for mortgage lending will be ditched from August. Well, the average price of a home in the UK hit a record high for the 5th consecutive month. Rightmove says the average asking price is now almost £370,000. They expect the pace of growth will slow in the second half of the year because of interest rate rises and the increased cost of living. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's return to Liam for today's On the Money.
Coming up on The Money today, while covering rail strikes, we also dig into the difficult issue of financial education. Almost half of UK adults feel they'd benefit from more financial education. That's according to a new report out from the Centre for Social Justice. As the internet exposes kids to financial dangers at an ever younger age, with thousands of youngsters now classed as, quote, problem gamblers, should primary school-age kids receive lessons in money management? We hold a detailed discussion. Plus, it's Startup Britain today, where we celebrate our nation's burgeoning new businesses. We're talking to mum of two, Gabby Jennings. She's on a mission to make sustainable bath products for children with her business Love Ocean, founded only last year. But how's Love Ocean scrubbing up? Sorry about that. In an already crowded market. That's Startup Britain later in the show. And as ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On the Money? How do they impact you? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll read out some of your messages later in the show, so stay with us, because this is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're on the money. Now, the public's number one concern right now is clearly the cost of living crisis, a subject we've been highlighting for months here on The Money and will return to very soon. At the start of this week, many will also be concerned about the 3 days of rail strike action this week by the RMT union, which is set seriously to disrupt our national rail network as well as London Underground. Workers getting to work, kids getting to school. The impact of strikes tomorrow, Thursday and Saturday will clearly be huge. Having said that, On The Money is focusing the top of the show today on another issue, and that's financial education. Because tackling this cost of living crisis should also prompt us to think hard about how we build the foundations for families' financial stability over the longer term. And for my money, that means ensuring people not only have money in their pockets, but prices don't spiral out of control. It also means that they have more financial education skills to manage their income to maximum benefit, reforming those financial lessons. Now, the Centre for Social Justice, they found that 44%, that's nearly half of UK adults, do want more financial education. That's half the population. They also feel 68% of young adults feel that they've had problems and they need more financial education too. 1 in 3 primary school kids, they receive financial education, but it should be much more than that. And even though financial education was put on the national curriculum since 2014, there's a problem because that education is not being fully implemented. Here on The Money, we often deal with financial education issues. And I'd also say that, in my view, there should be more financial education for children in schools. And that is our On The Money question today. Should primary school kids have compulsory financial lessons? Grown-up conversation with people who really know their stuff. That's what we do here on The Money. I'm delighted today to be joined by Robert Halfon, Conservative MP for Harlow, of course, and chair, no less, of the Commons Education Select Committee. Carolyn Griffiths, she also joins us. She is from the Centre for Social Justice, who put out today's report. Carolyn, great to have you with us, of course. That's the think tank which led this research. And Eva Eisenschimmel, she is Group Risk Officer at Lowell Group. They are a financial debt collection company. Great to have you with us, Eva. And she's here, backed by popular demand. Miss Blonde Money, here she is, CEO Helen Thomas, and On The Money regular, of course. Before we dive into today's discussion, I did just want to put one question to you, Robert, about the rail strikes. You are a very senior member of the House of Commons. You represent Harlow, which is very much a commuter town. Indeed, it's a stop that I pass through every day on the train. Many, many people getting on at Harlow Town, Harlow Mill, to go into London in one direction or up to Cambridge in another direction to work. Before we get into this really crucial issue of financial education, Robert, what's your take on today's or preparations for 3 days of strike action this coming week?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I'd urge the union bosses to call off this strike because it's affecting millions of people, children who won't be able to get to their exams, the public who need to go to NHS or hospital appointments, business people who won't be able to get to their place of work. It's going to damage the lives of millions of people, but also these strikes will damage our economy at a time when we need it least, especially given the cost of living crisis. We need to do everything possible to boost our economy. I've already had hotels contact me saying that their business is down. They're cutting the number of staff coming in because people aren't staying in the hotels because of the rail strike. So it's hurting our hospitality, hurting employment, hurting our economy, and hurting millions of people going about their daily lives. And of course, I accept that rail workers need a fair deal, especially those on lower pay bands. I'm not just talking about the drivers, I'm talking about guards and inspectors who are often on lower pay, or the ticket collectors. But we also have to recognise on the other side that this money, it comes from the taxpayer. It comes at a time when we are paying off for £80 billion of debt, interest alone. We're £2 trillion in debt, partly caused by spending £400 billion on COVID. So money is very difficult. I mean, if the government wanted to be popular, they just hand the money out to these rail workers, but it's very difficult. I hope that they get back to the negotiating table. I think, as I say, there should be a fair deal, but calling strikes and damaging our economy, all that means is that at the end of the day, the government are going to collect less revenue, so they'll have less money in order to fund some of these increases in the public sector.
Well, thanks for that, Robert. We have, of course, heard, and we will hear more from trade union voices here on GB News throughout the day, members of the Labour Party, indeed the Shadow Cabinet. They're saying that government ministers are sitting on their hands, twiddling their thumbs by not getting directly involved in the negotiation. But that debate will go on. Thank you for that intervention, Robert Halfon. Let's get back to our main subject now, which is financial education. Karen Griffith, you are with the Centre for Social Justice. We often highlight CSJ reports here on The Money. Financial education for primary school kids? Really?
We think that it's hugely important. What our research at the Center for Social Justice has shown is that kids are developing critical financial behaviors that will stick with them for the rest of their lives by the age of 7. So we need to start earlier. The other thing that we're seeing is that our financial landscape is rapidly digitizing, it's evolving constantly, and new risks are coming to market all the time. We know that kids are opening bank accounts earlier than ever before. They're online transacting. They're gaming where they have access to money. As you mentioned, 55,000 kids across the UK have been identified by the National Audit Office.
So that's
as
a government
gamblers.
body. I mean, that's
Yes.
an official body. This isn't, you know, just a private sector organisation.
That's
An
right.
official body. 55,000 kids are problem gamblers.
That's
Unbelievable.
Right. Yep, and 85,000 more at risk of problem gambling. So we believe that we've got to start earlier to equip kids with financial education to help protect them in this rapidly evolving financial marketplace, but also to ensure that they develop strong financial behaviors that will serve them for the rest of their lives.
Eva Eisenschimmel, you're with Lowell Group, a financial debt collecting organisation. You've been backing this research. You think this is a really important issue. How serious is it? I mean, the report, my eyes were popping out as I read it this morning. Obviously, lots of other news going on, but it strikes me this is really important. 1 in 8 young people who take out a buy now, pay later contract, very, very popular these days, almost a lifestyle choice for people my kids' age. 1 in 8 of them end up dealing, with all respect, with a debt collection company.
It's really important for us to work together with Carolyn and her team at the Centre for Social Justice because, as you say, we speak to thousands of people in my business at Lowell every week. And one of the most common comments that we hear is, if only I had learnt more at school, if only I'd had access to a bit more financial training and education, I wouldn't have ended up here. So it's absolutely core that we can find a way to crack this topic. We've been talking about it for years. We now need to break through and make a difference. The other thing that customers are telling us when they call is that they've got a lack of basic understanding of some of the key products. Very basic commercial products are just not understood.
The fine print's just too fine. It's too detailed.
Scary, too detailed, something that they're just afraid of. And so we've got a car loan, a credit card. If people aren't understanding those basic products, let alone some of the others that you've referred to, we have a problem in our country.
Robert Halfon, you have a well-deserved reputation, if I may say so, for identifying issues, picking them up, not letting them go, campaigning, bringing about legislative change. This report has shocked me, and I thought I knew a fair amount about this subject. How is it that even though financial education has been on the national curriculum for secondary schools since 2014, that hasn't been fully implemented yet, according to this report?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to recognise the work of the Centre for Social Justice. In my view, one of the most important think tanks in Britain. What they have published is quite harrowing. You've got 24 million adults reporting not being able to, not being confident about handling their money on a day-to-day basis. This doesn't just happen when they're adults. It happens because all through their life, they're not being taught or given any kind of financial education, and it must start at primary school. You know, financial education should be part of the primary school curriculum, a proper part of it. And just as the government, I put through an amendment in Parliament to make sure that children are taught about skills and apprenticeships, they should also have 3 financial education experiences across the secondary school life scan per year. So you have financial people coming in. It's incredibly important. And the CSJ expert highlighted the fact that kids are using finance now from a very young age in a way that perhaps me and you weren't when we were much younger, just getting literal pocket money rather than dealing with money on the internet. And I've always believed that we need a much more skills-based education system. And it isn't just post-16, which is what the government focuses on, but pre-16 as well. And when you sometimes say that, people think it's woolly and progressive. But when I talk about skills, I'm talking about careers, substantial, crunchy careers advice, financial education for children, vocational training all the way through, so that children, young people have all the skills that they need. They have knowledge and they have skills. And just to sum it up, it's not just about teaching the kids the names of fish, it's teaching them how to fish as well. And that should be our philosophy. And financial education should be a key skill that is put at the heart of our education system.
Helen, you're steeped in politics. You used to work for some bloke called George Osborne. I can't think what happened to him. And also you run a very sophisticated consultancy, if I may say so, for investors, helping them to understand politics and policy making and so on. What do you make of this? It sounds a little bit niche to some people in the midst of the cost of living crisis to be talking about this. But then you've got somebody who's very seriously experienced in frontline politics like Robert Halfon saying we must grab hold of this issue.
Well, the two are inextricably linked. Everyone right now is managing their money or worrying or thinking or dealing. We deal with it every single day, right? So, you know, hearing these numbers, you know, whether, frankly, yeah, 24 million is a big number, but even $1 million would be a big number, you know, unable to really feel confident about it. That is... It's just astonishing, and I'm glad we have the number. I'm glad we're all shocked, because that means we might actually do something about it.
Do you think big business, without sounding too conspiratorial, do you think big business quite likes the fact that people are scared of the fine print, that people don't like to talk about money, that people feel it's beyond them to get their arms around these kind of issues? It makes us more vulnerable, doesn't it? It's being ripped off.
It does, and it's actually something that's always frustrated me about the city. It's part of why I started Blonde Money, in fact, was to make complicated jargon make more sense. And that actually goes to the fact that even though my clients are quite sophisticated, it's amazing, isn't it, that, you know, interest rates, inflation, these really important topics that affect all our lives completely confuse people. And it's always been a passion of mine to ensure people understand it better. I can't think of a better way to start than you know, young years, you know, primary school. People, we all know that. You know, the sooner you get started on this, the easier it becomes.
Demystifies it, doesn't it? Makes it seem not scary anymore.
Exactly, it's not scary.
Well, this is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. We try and do our own bit for financial education, trying to explain these concepts. Inflation, the money supply, balance of payments crises and all the rest of it. After the break, we will keep this discussion going on financial education with my expert panel. Should under-11s receive bespoke financial education? Plus, we'll be joined by a charity putting this research into play in primary schools across the UK. Stay with us. You're On the Money.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. It's 1:23 now. There's no doubt, of course, the internet's become an established part of life for children from an early age. But the lack of financial knowledge among kids is posing unprecedented risks. We were saying before the break that the National Audit Office has identified as many as 55,000 children aged 11 to 16 who are now, quote, problem gamblers, with an additional 85,000 at risk. That's why the Centre for Social Justice think tank, among a range of recommendations, is calling for lessons in money management. They should be added to the national curriculum for primary schools. And so today, On the Money's asking, should under-11s receive compulsory financial education? I'm still with my expert panel. Robert Halfon, Conservative MP for Harlow and Chair of the Commons Education Select Committee, is among them. Carolyn Griffiths of the Centre for Social Justice. That's the think tank which led this research. And Eva Eichenschimmel of Lowell Group, a financial debt collection company. And, of course, Helen Thomas, Miss Blonde Money, here, a regular. It's also a pleasure to be joined now by Wendy Grace. She's the Education Delivery Manager at My Bank, a charity working in this area in primary schools. Great. Wendy Grace, tell me, what do you make of this CSJ research? Are we not over-egging the pudding a little bit? Shouldn't kids just be allowed to be kids? Financial education in primary school?
Well, at My Bank, we absolutely back this report. We go into primary schools. We have done for over 10 years now. As Carolyn was saying, habits are formed by the age of 7. So it's absolutely vital that we go out there and that we're able to talk to young people about their relationship with money. And what My Bank does is really looking at habit formation and having young people understand concepts such as delayed gratification and prioritising needs versus wants, as well as the big message that money is finite.
Robert, let's go back to you. Now, I've been a journalist for quite a few years now. And financial education often comes up as an issue, and we never seem to crack it, do we? What's the problem? Is it Whitehall? Is it teachers? Is it parents? Why can't we get financial education firmly embedded in the curriculum across a range of ages? Little is more important in life, apart from family, than the ability to manage your finances. And the two, of course, are often inextricably linked.
Yeah, I think the problem is it's not regarded as important as, let's say, core skills like English and maths. I also think that because much of the education system is knowledge-based, is focused on learning and multiplication tables, literature, and I think that there isn't enough support, particularly pre-16, given to skills-based education, because there's a view out there wrongly that this is, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, seen as quite woolly and progressive. But actually, what could be more, what could improve standards better than making sure children from primary school onwards learnt about family education? We're in danger of becoming a financially illiterate nation. The OECD did a study in 2016 and found that half of adults couldn't answer basic financial tests properly. So we need to really change this, because finance is everything. Unless you know how to look after your finances, do a budget, you're going to face potentially very difficult circumstances throughout your life. And I think that this report about embedding financial education into PSHE and making sure that there are proper financial education interactions with children raises other issues about making sure that our education system is as much skill-based as knowledge-based. Both are important. We have this false argument, knowledge versus skills, but it should be knowledge and skills, and financial education is one of those key skills. I would just say one other thing. It isn't just about the schools. Having said all that, the family and parenting has to be involved. And I think the CSJ says that the government financial services and other agencies should work with parents in family hubs to help those parents who may not have the financial awareness that other parents might have. And so they pass that on to the children as well.
Robert Halfon, Tory MP for Harlow, Chair of the Education Select Committee. Great to have you on the show today talking about this CSJ report, and good to know that you are across this issue. Carolyn, let's turn back to you. Robert mentioned there this OECD study. That's the organisation of 30-odd advanced industrialised countries. We Brits, we're not very good by international standards, are we, at all this financial education stuff? I'm talking basic percentages, the basic ability to understand a consumer credit contract.
Yeah, that's right. We don't line up, which is, I think, very surprising for people to hear. We're well below places like Canada, Norway and France, and we're only just above Thailand and Albania, right below.
Middle-income countries at best.
Right, right. Financial literacy, I think, is too often pigeonholed as budgeting alone. It's much broader than that. It's the skills, the attitudes, the knowledge, and the behaviors to help people manage their money well day to day and in the future. So it is that day-to-day budgeting, but it's also choosing and using financial products. It's knowing when to seek help when you need it. It's understanding what resources are available to you. And those are critical skills for the everyday. They're also critical skills amidst a cost of living crisis where people are looking at their budgets and saying, where can I save pennies? So these are skills that everyone needs, and the UK needs to bring the public up to snuff.
Eva Eisenschimel, you are from Lola Debt Collection Agency. What can the debt collection industry do to help bring about more financial education?
Well, a number of things, I hope. I mean, firstly, to make sure that we are accessible and welcoming to customers who find themselves, often through no fault of their own, in financial difficulty. So that's fixing the now problem, perhaps the problem that's been built up over a number of years. And we urge everybody to get in touch with us. Secondly, is to work with organisations like the Centre for Social Justice to try and influence financial education early doors, preventative, so fix and prevent. And as Robert was saying, if we can't address life skills and can't see financial education as the most vital core skill, then there's going to be more and more people coming through my doors.
Could this catch a political wave? Helen, we're obviously in the teeth of a cost of living crisis. I think most people, it pains me to say, thinks it will get worse before it gets better. But surely part of the response to this cost of living crisis has to be ensuring that ordinary folk have got a better handle on the world of finance and money.
Well, it would be an easy win politically, I think. You're hearing it there from Robert. There's already been work done. I've only seen a little bit about this report, but, the budget for actually achieving and delivering on this seems manageable at a time even when the government's budget is stretched. But, let's be frank about this government. They roll from crisis to crisis. This week alone, there's the rail strikes, the by-elections. Goodness knows what stories may come out and then disappear. Who knows? But all of that really should be by the by, and this isn't. It's an easy win. There's some clear, practical deliverables here from the Centre for Social Justice. It seems to me that it's something that I can't imagine anybody thinking it wouldn't be a good idea to just demystify and understand money better.
Let's go very briefly at the end. Just bring her in one more time. Wendy Grace of My Bank. Wendy, do you see any sense from government that there's more welly getting behind this policy?
Well, it's definitely coming up in conversation more. I'm not entirely sure how much of it is government in changing national curriculum. A lot of national curriculum stuff to do with money kind of starts in secondary school and not so much in primary. But, you know, like from our end, we've started this new financial freedom pledge where we're trying to get to 250,000 young people, including primary school children, just to do exactly as your panel are talking about, demystifying money and having young people understand their relationship to it and how it works and how it's so integral to so many aspects of society.
Wendy Grace, good to talk to you of My Bank. Thank you for taking part in the discussion today. We heard from Robert Halfon, who's chair of the Education Select Committee. And thanks also to my guests in the studio, Carolyn Griffiths of the Centre for Social Justice, who spearheaded this research, and Eva Eichenschimmel of Lowell Group, and indeed Helen Thomas of Blonde Money. Great to have you all with us. An important discussion. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan, and we will carry on focusing on financial education in the weeks and months ahead, I promise you. Coming up, today's Startup Britain is with Gabby Jennings. Last year, she founded her business, Love Ocean, which sells sustainable bath products for kids. And she's already making a splash in the industry with her products hitting high street stores this month. More on that after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
It's 1:34. Good afternoon. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Downing Street says the government's not taking part in last-minute talks between unions and industry bosses ahead of this week's rail strikes. The industrial action is going to cause major travel disruption tomorrow, Thursday and on Saturday. Unions are accusing the government of inflaming tensions in England, saying agreements have been reached with operators in Wales and that meaningful talks are taking place in Scotland. The government insists the offer is on the table, is fair and reasonable pay rise. Heathrow Airport has asked airlines flying from Terminals 2 and 3 to cancel 10% of scheduled services today. It's after EasyJet announced it's cutting more flights over the summer in response to a cap introduced by Gatwick, with a similar limit being imposed by Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport. Energy companies will be prevented from charging high direct debits under plans put forward by the regulator Ofgem. The proposals also include rules to protect customers' credit balances and green levy payments if a company goes bust. Suppliers will also be required to have enough money to make sure they can weather future shocks. The Shadow Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, is being investigated over allegations he breached ministerial rules on registering financial interests. He faces claims about earnings, gifts and foreign travel. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says he's absolutely confident the MP for Tottenham has not broken any rules. The new head of the British Army has warned that troops must be prepared to fight in Europe as the war in Ukraine continues. General Sir Patrick Sanders says it's imperative that the army's ready to fight and win wars on land. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.226 to the dollar. It's 1.165 to the euro. The price of gold currently stands at £1,499.14 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for real-time investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. It's 1:38 here on GB News TV, DAB plus digital radio and online. Now, rail workers, of course, are on the brink of the biggest rail strike in decades, with more than 40,000 employees set to walk out tomorrow, Thursday and Saturday, causing massive disruption to the UK's national rail network and London's tube. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has hit out at the Labour Party for failing to condemn the strikes, calling for Sir Keir Starmer to put people above the party coffers. Labour, meanwhile, accuses ministers of twiddling their thumbs and refusing to negotiate with the RMT rail union. Our North East of England reporter Rachel Sweeney has sent us this report from Durham.
Millions of people will be affected by the rail strikes at a time when it is absolutely crucial for them to get to work. They might have taken on extra hours or even extra jobs to get through the cost of living crisis. But there's a huge momentum within the unions. General Secretary Mick Lynch, in a recent speech, said, "Together we are unstoppable. Get up and fight or live on your knees. The struggle is on. Bring it on. This is the fight of our lives. Victory to the RMT." Now, those words are very powerful, and the impact that the unions are planning on having is supposed to be impactful too, because services on railways and the London Underground are seriously affected from tomorrow. It's the biggest walkout the rail industry has seen in 30 years. And why? It's a row over pay, conditions and jobs. So let me just run through what's going to happen. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union, or the RMT as we know it, at Network Rail and 13 train operators will strike Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. 20% of trains will be running, so we can expect huge disruption, especially in the capital, because the RMT and Unite are also planning a 24-hour walkout on the London Underground, so there'll be huge disruption there too. Now, the Department for Transport has said that striking should be a last resort, not a first. It says it's very disappointed, but the TUC says the government should be more positive, and that using terms of phrase like threatening to revoke workers' legal rights is inflaming tensions and not helping the situation. The TUC says rail workers in Wales have reached agreements with rail operators on pay and job protections, and in Scotland, meaningful negotiations are said to be taking place. But what we need to consider as well is the economy and the economic impact this is going to have. This morning on GB News Breakfast with Eamon and Rosie, we heard the CEO of UK Hospitality, Kate Nichols, suggest that her industry, the hospitality sector, will see a £500 million drop in revenue. There's mixed opinions on social media. Sam Brooke said, "I support the rail workers. Why should I expect them not to have what I would expect for myself?" Wayne Smith, "If my employer failed to pay me what I thought I was worth, I would get another job." And Adrian Gregory, "Stop bringing the country to a standstill." We'll follow this as developments come out here on GB News.
And from Rachel Sweeney there in Durham to Norwich, where our East of England reporter Ed Crawford has been hearing from some of those set to be impacted by those planned rail strikes tomorrow, Thursday and Saturday. Here's Ed.
Good afternoon. Yes, I am in Norwich city centre. I am at the train station, and I've been speaking to lots of people about the rail strikes and how it's going to affect their business. And one such person is this taxi driver, Craig Dimbleby.
That's correct. Yeah.
Craig, How do you think the rail strikes are going to impact your business?
Oh, massively. It's just another nail in our coffin. Obviously, between here and Norwich, we have a good many communities that go backwards and forwards, sometimes for a couple of nights. A lot of people from the financial institutions that come in, stay for the hotels a couple of nights. Obviously, we're not getting them customers. And as you can see, we just sat here now twiddling our thumbs on top of everything else that we're not getting.
Well, I notice, a lot of the engines are off. People aren't, you haven't got the engine running idly. I know it's because you're not terribly busy, partly because of the rail strikes. Tell me, are the petrol prices taking a pinch on your business?
Oh, they're taking more of a pinch on us. They're taking a massive bite out of us, because we are acting, we're governed by the local council on our price rises. We put in for a price rise. We've still not heard anything. They've still not had a meeting about it. We're paying on average now an extra £30 to £35 a week in fuel, and it's killing us. It's absolutely killing us. There's lots of drivers now leaving the trade, going in, delivering for various companies, and like you said, it's just the way that the life is. And compared to private hire, they have the use of apps. We don't have apps, and so we just sat here waiting for the most that I can hope for is someone to come up to me and ask for a ride. It used to be the greatest thing about the job, but these days no one's doing that.
It's tough times for the taxi drivers, and it's even tougher times now that these rail strikes are going to put a squeeze on your trade. Yeah.
First and foremost, I want to say that the men and women of the train unions are totally 100% back them. They have a right to stand up for the working rights. And it's unfortunate that we don't have more unions that are strong enough to stand up for that. I'm an ex-coal miner myself, so I believe in the union structure. But yeah, I totally support them. If it has to bite on us, then so be it. We're prepared to do that. We made the strongest stuff around these ports.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for talking to me. And it's tough times ahead, but it looks like the rail strikes are gonna go ahead, and hopefully the government can get something sorted.
GBNews East of England reporter there, Ed Crawford, talking to Norwich-based taxi driver Craig Dimbleby. Now, we'll certainly be covering those rail strikes tomorrow here on The Money, if indeed I can get into work. Crikey, I'll have to sleep under the desk. Of course, it's a big economic issue as well as a political issue too, and it'll be interesting for me to see, and indeed for all of us, if the RMT does go through with each of these three-day strike actions, as I say, tomorrow, Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday. The biggest strike planned on Britain's rail network in decades. Well, today it's Startup Britain, on The Money's regular slot, featuring some of the most successful and interesting startups in the UK right now. Britain's bath wash and body wash industry scrubs up pretty well, if you pardon the pun. Sales of these products were estimated at a whopping £379 million back in December 2020, having increased consistently over the last decade. But it is a crowded market. But that didn't stop today's Startup Britain guest from founding her own bath time business. Last year, mum of two, Gabby Jennings, created Love Ocean, which sells environmentally friendly bath products for kids, such as bubble bath, body wash and reusable whale tail bottles. And Love Ocean's already making waves, having secured a deal with Ocado in October last year. That's the online branch of Waitrose, of course, as well as launching in Boots earlier this month. So here she is, Gabby Jennings, founder of Love Ocean, my latest guest on Startup Britain. Gabby, great to have you in the studio. We have all kinds of business people here in the On The Money studio, not least for Startup Britain. So here it is, the famous whale tail bottle. Crikey. Yeah, that'll persuade a kid to persuade a mum to buy. Very clever. How did you get into business? Are you a business person anyway, or you just fancied it?
No, my background's advertising and marketing. Worked in the beauty industry for many years. So, yeah, I sort of really saw it from the other side of the spectrum, really, just once the products were in market and then sort of how we would market and advertise them. So, yeah, this is a complete sort of, departure from what I was doing previously. So it's been quite a steep learning curve.
So as a mum of two, you're obviously buying body wash and particularly bath wash products, and I guess you saw a gap in the market. When I was a kid, it was all about mateys, a bottle of fun. You put me in the bath, a very catchy earworm TV ad. It's a big market, isn't it? But a crowded market.
Yeah, it is. And I think, really the opportunity that I saw was, exactly to your point, sort of that really iconic piece of packaging that Matey had in the 80s that reminds
Clean fun,
us.
clean kids and a clean bath.
Exactly that. So, I just thought looking at, it's obviously it's an essential product for families, sort of bath products for kids. And there just seemed to be this sort of real gap for something that, was sort of organic and natural and good for skin that mums were really searching for, but also in a piece of packaging that really could sort of inspire kids and, sort of work for them as well. And as a parent, I always found myself sort of, compromising between sort of good for skin and, a fun product perhaps that the kids would want, So it was really sort of bringing those two things together, and that was the opportunity that I saw.
Now, my kids are mainly grown up now, but I do remember bath times. I mean, it's a key moment of the day, isn't it? It should be a fun time. It's also a time when particularly mums are absolutely frazzled a day of look. You just want to get them in bed. Of course, you love them dearly, but shut up now, go away. Need some time to myself. It's important to make bath time fun time, isn't it? So I guess that's why you've got the whale tail bottle. That's why you're trying to encourage mums and kids to like bubbles and associating cleanliness and routine with having fun together.
Absolutely, and I think for me really, having the whale-shaped bottle because was a real opportunity to bring a really important environmental message, into those family bath times. I think it's such it is a stressful part of the day, but it's also the time that mums get to really sit and have one-on-one time with the children, and therefore it's an amazing time to really engage with children and talk about some of these sort of big issues perhaps that are on their radar, and this was a kind of a good cue to do that really. So
you had the advertising and marketing smarts from your previous life, Gabby. How difficult was it to get a product in a bottle like that? Lots and lots of I's to dot, T's to cross, lots of stuff you put on kids' skin. It has to be tested. And then getting the deals with the likes of Ocado, the likes of Boots. That must have taken a lot of determination. Was it harder than you thought it would be?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think anyone can prepare you for this journey. And I think every journey is completely unique. I think that, for me personally, it was about really, sort of delving into my network and finding the experts that I needed to help me deliver on each part of the business plan, really. And that's been an amazing sort of journey of sort of aggregating, particularly...
Must have been like pulling teeth.
Yeah, it was, but also because of the complexities of, COVID and lockdown.
Yeah,
I mean, I was basically pulling the business together, throughout lockdown, as well as raising funds and going out fundraising. So...
And looking after your two kids.
And looking after my two kids and, running a family home. So, it was tough, but... there's a real driver behind, a passion project like this. I mean, for me, it was, I just had a determination to get it to market. And I think that, was what really kind of got me through all of the stresses, I think.
Now, in my experience, entrepreneurs, they are exceptional people, but they're also normal people doing exceptional things, aren't they? I mean, what is it about you, about your makeup that made you determined to do this? You had advertising, marketing, you're a well-established professional. You could have gone back after your kids. There were openings available for you. What made you put yourself through all this pain? Is it just the prospect that if you get this thing really launched and you get kids singing, Love Ocean adverts as opposed to Matey adverts, of course, other bath suds are available, then you can make a lot of cash out of this. But what is the real motivation here for you, Gabby?
The motivation for me is that, that we need big change. I have a love of the ocean, and I think what for me was a real passion point was seeing my children at a young age noticing plastic pollution on the beaches and coming to me and feeling that it was their responsibility to pick up this pollution because they understood the impact of that. And I think, for me, this is about, as a small business, really showing to some of the bigger businesses that have much more resource to make big change. And it's sort of like if we can make change, then so can everyone. It's really about
of course, that's the environmental message, and of course, listeners and viewers will be thinking, yeah, you know, all firms have to have an environmental message these days, don't they? It's almost de rigueur, it's almost compulsory, and you're a nasty person if you don't have one. But in the end, that you need real determination, don't you, to see through. You know, you're taking on really big companies that, you know, the Unilevers, the Procter and Gambles, and so on. How, you know, what makes you think that your little whale there can actually be a shark and take a bite out of their market share? You're going to need something different, aren't you? You're going to need some particular piece of branding, some particular moment when you can capture the public's imagination. What's it going to be?
You know, I think it's about investing in packaging. You know, I think, you know, the tradition for so long has been to sort of, you know, buy off-the-shelf packaging because it's easily accessible and it's cheaper. But the reality is that, you know, if we want things to change, we have to, as you know, brand owners and producers, we have to invest in things like plastic packaging, because the more we invest in it, the more people will keep it and they will see it as a commodity rather than something that can just be discarded and thrown away. So I think really that's what, you know, and you know, tooling a bottle from scratch rather than going and buying a bottle off the shelf is a massive undertaking. And it was a huge gamble and a huge risk up front, you know, getting investors to get on board and actually, you know, pre-revenue buy into the vision of that, you know. And I think, you know, to your point about Ocado and, you know, Boots and some of these big retailers that have picked us up within 6 months, you know, that really is testament to the packaging. Because you know, they can see the potential of what we've created. So I think that's...
What would be the one thing you'd tell Gabby a couple of years ago as opposed to Gabby now? What would you tell someone watching or listening to this interview who's thinking, I could be an entrepreneur? What's the key lesson you've learned?
Just go for it. You know, I think, you know, it's never going to be perfect. You know, I think everybody, you know, feels that, you know, you've got to get all of your ducks in a row before you even move. And I think what I've learned is that, you know, you've just got to get out there and go for it, you know, and just see where things land and just, you know, deal with the problems as they arise.
She's very determined. Gabby Jennings, great to see you. Thanks, to meet this Love Ocean whale tail bottle. There it is. Good to see you here on The Money. Our latest Startup Britain guest there, Gabby Jennings. Lots of you discussed topics on the show. You've sent in emails on rail strikes. Fiona says, MP Robert Halfon says the wages for rail workers come from taxpayers, but Grant Shapp says it's a private company. We keep hearing train drivers are well paid, but RMT voted to strike. We need clarity. Matthew says essential services should have strikes banned. Why are we catering to long outdated union organisations who still hold the government to ransom? The employees who already have fantastic pensions can get another job if they're not happy. On financial education, many emails on this. Mark got in touch to say, let under 11s be children. They will be adults with what life throws at them quickly enough. What are we trying to do to our kids? And Paul says, financial education is essential, a contrasting view there. Apart from the obvious benefits in educating people how to best manage their money and therefore their lives, there are also huge health benefits. A large proportion of stress-related mental health issues are attributed to financial problems. Very true. Thanks for all your emails. Keep them coming. That's all we've got time for today. But join me tomorrow at 1 p.m, where we will continue our focus on the cost of living crisis. And, of course, we'll be covering the biggest rail strike in decades set to take place, not just tomorrow, but Thursday and Saturday too. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your company. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. A fine day for most of us, plenty of sunshine for the vast majority, but there will be some cloud and rain affecting the far north, where a cold front is moving into the northwest of Scotland. Ahead of that, a ridge of high pressure, and the low that brought rain and showers during the weekend to southern areas is moving away into the Bay of Biscay. So a ridge of high pressure for many. Fine, sunny spells. For the vast majority, it's looking dry as well. Just some patchy cloud building up. Some fair weather cloud, really. And for the north and northwest of Scotland, thicker cloud here.